She fired the CEO. But 15 years ago, they didn't even say her name. To them, she was just Miss Denise. Not Denise Jenkins. Not Mrs. Jenkins, like she preferred. Just the janitor. No title. No respect. No idea who they were really dealing with. Every morning at 5:45 a.m., she showed up. Not a single meeting on her calendar. Not a single person waiting to greet her. Just a cart. A mop. And the silence of a building that had long forgotten the people who built it. She scrubbed their floors. Emptied their trash. Wiped their smudged glass doors and fingerprint-covered elevator buttons. She saw everything, but no one ever really saw her. And that was their mistake. Because while they were busy ignoring her, she was documenting them. Every comment, every cut corner, every cruel laugh in the executive suite. She kept the receipts. And now she wasn't pushing a mop. She was walking into the boardroom with the original ownership contracts in one hand and the power to end careers in the other. The woman they looked past was about to take the company back. 15 years. That's how long she moved like air through that building scene. But not noticed. Present. But never acknowledged. Every day. Same routine. Unlock the back door. Clock in. Push the cart. Start at the basement and work her way up. No one ever asked about her life. No one wondered where she went after she clocked out. She wasn't a person to them. Just part of the background. They called her Miss Denise when they felt polite. Cleaning lady when they didn't. Sometimes they didn't call her anything at all. They'd walk past her like she wasn't there. Talk right through her. Gossip. Complain. Lie as if the mop in her hand made her deaf. But she heard everything. She heard the executive who joked about slashing health benefits because they're lucky to even have jobs. She heard the HR rep tell a manager, "Don't worry. We can make it look like a resignation." She heard Douglas Fairbanks, senior VP, laughing in the hallway, saying, "Can you imagine working here for 20 years and not even having an office?" He said it within earshot. She was holding a trash bag. He didn't care. And Denise didn't flinch. She just kept walking. Kept collecting. Kept storing moments like coins in a jar, waiting for the day it would all add up. Because Denise knew something they didn't. The quieter you are, the more people assume you're not paying attention. And the more they assume, the sloppier they get. Some days it was gum on the floor. Other days it was overheard conversations about bonuses cut from hourly workers just so the execs could afford a team-building retreat in Aspen. She'd wipe their mess. Then scribble a quick note on a scrap of paper. Names. Dates. What they said. She didn't need a microphone. She had memory. And motive. And unlike them, Denise wasn't careless. She was patient. They thought she was beneath them, but she was beneath them in another way. She was underneath everything, watching. Listening. Remembering. And one day, she would rise. Before there were floor buffers and mop handles. Before her name became a whisper in the hallway. There was a kitchen table. Columbus. Georgia. 1998. The hum of a cheap refrigerator. Stacks of takeout boxes pushed to the side. And in the middle, a dream scribbled on the back of a grocery receipt. That's where it all began. Roland Jenkins had a different kind of fire in him. He'd grown up hauling boxes on his uncle's delivery truck, running routes through back roads in Alabama and South Carolina before anyone called it supply chain management. He didn't have a degree, but he had grit. And hustle. The kind of hustle that didn't sleep. Denise was the quiet one. But quiet didn't mean soft. She had a mind for details, contracts, logistics, numbers that added up clean. They were a perfect match. He made things move. She made sure nothing got lost along the way. They sat at that table for hours, him talking, her sketching out the plan on paper napkins and church bulletins. He wanted to call it Jenkins Freight and Haul. She shook her head. No, she said. This can't just be your name. Because this isn't just your dream. He smiled, leaned back in his chair. Well, what should we call it then? She paused, thought for a moment, then said quietly, Creswell. It sounds clean. Like something solid. Something that'll last. That's how it started. 2 flip phones. 1 second-hand fax machine that jammed every other morning. And her father's life insurance money, $28. Zero. The only inheritance she'd ever receive. She didn't spend it on a house. Didn't buy a new car. She invested it in Roland. In the dream. But she also made one decision that would change everything later. Put it in your name. She told him. He blinked. You sure I know what I'm doing? She said. And I trust you. He reached across the table and took her hand. Then we build this together. And they did. For 6 years. They built it piece by piece. Roland on the road. Denise in the books. Late nights. Missed birthdays. Lean months. But they pushed through. She registered a backup LLC in her name quietly. Just in case. Not because she didn't trust Roland, but because she'd seen what happened to other women when life didn't go according to plan. She was smart like that. Smart enough to know that empires built by 2 people can still be stolen by 1. But at that time, all she saw was love. Momentum. And a future she believed in. She had no way of knowing that one rainy night on I-85 would change everything. It was supposed to be a short run. One last delivery. Roland had promised to be back by midnight. Denise had left the porch light on. She always did. But that night, he never came home. A wreck on I-85. The trailer flipped. The driver in the other truck had fallen asleep. Roland never had a chance. She got the call at 3:12 a.m. By 3:30, she was on the highway. Headlights cutting through the darkness. Heart pounding like it was trying to escape her chest. But it was too late. He was already gone. The funeral was quiet. Too quiet. Curtis stood at the podium, saying all the right words. Loyal partner. Hard-working visionary. Gone too soon. But his voice was flat. His eyes dry. He never once said Denise's name. She sat in the second row, hands folded in her lap, wondering when she had become invisible even at her husband's funeral. After the service, Curtis pulled her aside. Take some time, he said. We'll handle things at the office. She nodded. Numb. Broken. Trusting. That was her mistake. 2 weeks later, Denise tried to log in to the company portal. Access denied. She called the office. The receptionist paused. I think Curtis will call you back. He never did. A week later, she saw a press release online. Creswell Holdings welcomes new leadership as Curtis Banning steps into full operational control. No mention of Roland. No mention of Denise. Nothing. That night, she sat at her dining table, pulled out the dusty contract folder from 1998, the one she kept in a locked drawer, and began flipping through every line. And there it was. Black ink on white paper. Roland and Denise Jenkins. Equal investment. Joint authority. And most importantly, a notarized clause that stated if either party passed away, their ownership transferred to the surviving spouse. She had the right. She had the proof. She could have walked in with lawyers and taken it all back. But she didn't. Because Denise understood something Curtis never would. Power isn't just about what you have. It's about when you use it. So she waited, watched, and started planning. Not for revenge. Not yet. For something deeper. Something stronger. Justice. The first time she saw the job posting, it was taped to a corkboard at a community center off Monroe Avenue. Night janitorial staff needed. Creswell Logistics. Surrey. 25-hour. Must be able to lift 40 pounds. Most people would have walked right past it. Denise didn't. She circled it in red ink. Then she stared at it for a long time. It sounded ridiculous. Even to her. A woman with documented ownership. With contracts, clauses, and legal standing. Volunteering to mop floors in her own company. But Denise wasn't interested in storming the castle. She wanted to walk through the front gate, wearing a name tag. No headlines. No lawsuits. Just access. She didn't want power announced. She wanted power earned through silence. Observation. And patience. The real work, she thought, happens when no one's looking. So she crafted a new resume. Stripped it of everything real. No college degree. No mention of ownership. A fake address borrowed from her cousin across town. She used her middle name and her maiden last name. Denise Walker. It sounded forgettable. Perfect. 2 days later, she showed up for the interview. Fresh sneakers. Clean slacks. Hair pulled back. Hands folded in her lap like a woman with nothing to lose and everything to hide. The hiring manager glanced at her application. You ever cleaned professionally before? Yes. Sire. She said. Years ago. In Columbus. He nodded like he didn't care. Can you work nights? I prefer them. She replied. He looked at her. A second too long. Then shrugged. You're hired. We'll get your badge by Monday. That was it. No background check. No call to references. Just a quick judgment from a man who didn't think janitors mattered enough to verify. That Friday, Denise walked into the building for her first shift. Nobody recognized her. Nobody looked twice. Curtis had already stepped back from daily operations. The new CEO, Thomas Wexler Young. Polished. All MBA. And no memory, didn't even glance her way when he passed in the lobby. Perfect. That night, she put on her gloves, grabbed her mop, and started walking floor by floor, not as an outsider. Not as a victim. But as an undercover architect in the ruins of something she once helped build. She was done waiting. Now, she was watching. And the countdown had begun. In most companies, the walls don't talk. But in Creswell Holdings, the janitor's cart did. Especially when it squeaked down the 6th floor hallway just outside the executive suite. Denise had learned early on that, when people think you're invisible, they don't bother to whisper. So she stopped trying to disappear and started listening, really listening. She heard everything. Like the CFO bragging over lunch about how they reclassified employee bonuses as performance-based to dodge payouts, or the marketing director giggling as she said, I just make interns do the dirty work. Saves budget and no one complains. Or the warehouse manager telling HR, if he wants hazard pay, maybe he shouldn't stand under broken lights. Tell him to duck. Sometimes it was worse than careless. Sometimes it was cruel. Denise once stood in the supply closet and listened to 2 VPs joke about cutting health coverage for part-time workers. One of them said, they're lucky they even get a paycheck. The other added, hell, half of them probably qualify for food stamps anyway. They laughed. Denise didn't. She just scribbled it down in her little black notebook. The notebook stayed hidden in her locker, tucked behind an old plastic bag of gloves no one touched. Page after page. She filled it with names, dates, direct quotes, everything said out loud that shouldn't have been. But it wasn't just the talking. It was what she saw, too. A janitor named Rosa who limped her entire shift, but kept working because she couldn't afford to miss a day. A driver who fell asleep in the break room between doubles. He hadn't taken a day off in 2 months. And Cynthia, sweet Cynthia, who smiled every night like she wasn't breaking apart inside. Denise saw it all, and the longer she watched, the more she realized this wasn't a company anymore. It was a machine. Cold, efficient, disposable. And the people, they were just parts to be swapped out when worn down. But the thing about machines is they break down, especially when someone's keeping notes on every loose wire and oil leak. Denise wasn't collecting gossip. She was building a case, one mop stroke at a time. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Just after the third-floor breakroom party, one of the junior managers had turned 30 balloons. Store-bought cake. A cheap banner taped crooked to the wall. Denise had just finished cleaning the kitchen, wiping frosting off the counters, refilling the powdered creamer they called premium. She was walking her cart past the conference hallway when she saw it. A paper plate, sitting dead in the center of the floor. Half-eaten cake, fork sticking out, chocolate smeared into the carpet. Not near a trash can, not dropped by accident, just left there, like trash, like a challenge. She stared at it for a moment, then bent down slowly, not because it was hard but because something about that plate felt deliberate, like someone left it there just to see what she'd do. She picked it up, didn't say a word. That's when she heard the voice. "You missed a spot." It came from the end of the hallway. Thomas Wexler, CEO, hands in his pockets, leaning against the wall like a man with all the time in the world and none of the self-awareness. Denise turned her head just slightly. "Excuse me," she asked. Polite, calm. He walked toward her slowly, pointed at the floor where she had just cleaned. "Right there. We're about to have a client presentation in this room. Think you can give it one more pass?" There was no spot. Not a smudge. Not a scuff. Denise looked down anyway, then back up. She nodded. "I'll make sure it's spotless," she said. Wexler smirked, clapped his hands once. "That's what I like to hear." Then he added offhand, like it meant nothing, "Sometimes I swear you people just pretend to clean so you can stay on the clock." The words hit different. Not just the insult, but the "you people." Denise didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She didn't respond. But inside something snapped, and Wexler didn't see it. Because men, like him, never see it, never notice when they've crossed the line until someone drags the line behind them like a tripwire. Denise walked away, cake plate still in hand, but that night she didn't go home. She went to the records room, and the quiet war officially began. It was just after 11:30 p.m. Denise was finishing her shift cart half empty, gloves off, mind full. She had spent the last 3 hours in the records room, quietly scanning budget sheets, emails, performance logs. She took photos. She took notes. She took it all in. And yet, what hit her hardest that night wasn't on a spreadsheet. It came from the janitor's locker room. She was just about to clock out when she heard the sobbing, muffled, shaky, coming from behind one of the rows of old metal lockers. She walked quietly around the corner and found her, Cynthia, always smiling, always singing under her breath. The kind of woman who brought her own tea bags and offered them to everyone. But tonight, Cynthia was hunched over, hands trembling, eyes red and swollen. She tried to wipe her face when she saw Denise. "I'm okay," she whispered. It's nothing." Denise didn't push. She just sat beside her on the wooden bench, waited a moment, then said softly, "You want me to listen? Or just sit?" That cracked something open. Cynthia sniffled. "My son, my baby, he got in a car accident this afternoon." Denise's heart stopped. Cynthia continued. "He's okay. I mean, he's alive. Broken arm. Concussion. But I asked for time off to go to the hospital. And they said no. Said they didn't have coverage tonight." She laughed, but there was no joy in it. "They said I could go after my shift." "After my shift?" Denise didn't speak. Because what was there to say? Cynthia had no power. No backup. No one in the office even knew her name. She was just another name on a printed schedule, one that couldn't be moved. Even for a mother with a child in the ER. Denise sat very still. Because something in her, something deep, cracked. Not with anger. With clarity. It had been 15 years of watching. Waiting. Gathering. But tonight she felt it. This wasn't just her fight anymore. This wasn't about revenge. Or control. Or contracts. It was about every single person like Cynthia, people who gave everything and got nothing. People who showed up when no one clapped. Who stayed silent when they should have screamed. Who smiled through pain and wiped tears no one saw. Denise looked at Cynthia and felt the final piece click into place. It was time. The diner was old. Worn vinyl booths. Coffee that tasted like yesterday. And a jukebox that hadn't worked since the Obama administration. Denise picked the farthest booth from the window. The one in the corner, half-shadowed. Mostly forgotten. She didn't want to be seen. Not yet. The man who slid into the seat across from her wore a faded gray suit. No tie. No pleasantries. Just a black leather briefcase and eyes that had seen too many broken promises. Elliot Miles. Lavier. Quiet. Precise. And most importantly, loyal to the truth. He didn't ask why she called. He just waited. Denise slid the flash drive across the table. Then the notebook. Then a stack of photos. Documents. Printed emails. 15 years. 15 years of silence. 15 years of rot captured line by line. Elliot didn't say a word. He opened the briefcase. Pulled out a tablet. Started scrolling. Minutes passed. The waitress came and refilled their coffee. Neither of them touched it. Finally, Elliot looked up. "Denise, this isn't just unethical. It's criminal." She nodded once. "I know." He kept flipping. More photos. More names. Handwritten quotes. "They've committed wage fraud," he said. "And if I dig deeper, I guarantee I'll find tax violations." "You will," she replied. He paused again. Met her eyes. "Are you ready for this?" Denise's voice was calm. "Even. I've been cleaning up their mess for 15 years. It's time they see what I've been sweeping under the rug." He leaned back. Let out a breath. "I'll start the paperwork." "What's the plan?" she asked. "We do this quietly," he said. "First, we request a shareholder meeting. Emergency review clause under your ownership rights. You walk in with majority control. No need for a courtroom, not yet. Just truth. In the right room." Denise looked down at the flash drive, then at her own hands. Rough, callosed, but steady. "I don't want drama," she said. "I want change." Elliot nodded. Then let them stay comfortable. Let them keep thinking you're just a janitor. The fall always hits harder when they never saw the edge. That night, as Denise walked back to her car, she didn't feel fear. She felt weight shift, like something massive had finally started to move. She had no microphone, no stage, no army, but she had truth. And now, she had the law. The boardroom looked exactly the same. 12 leather chairs, one oversized chandelier, and a custom walnut table Wexler once bragged had been flown in from Seattle, as if imported furniture meant imported integrity. The meeting was scheduled for 10:00 a.m. At 9:59, Wexler leaned against the head of the table. T-locent, arms crossed, wearing the smug grin of a man who thought he owned the room. To his left, Meredith Chandler, VP of Operations. Sharp blazer, sharper tongue. She glanced at the agenda and whispered something snide. Next to her, Curtis Banning. Yes, that Curtis, thicker now. Getter, eyes on his phone, pretending not to be nervous. And then, the door opened. No knock. No hesitation. Just calm, confident footsteps across that expensive walnut floor. Every head turned, and there she was, Denise Jenkins. Not in uniform, not in gloves, not behind a mop. She wore a tailored navy blazer, pressed slacks, no badge, no cleaning cart, just a folder tucked neatly under her arm. Wexler frowned. Maintenance usually comes after hours. Denise didn't blink. I'm not here for maintenance. Meredith scoffed. I'm sorry. Do you have an appointment? I do. Denise replied, walking toward the far end of the table, and the shareholders were properly notified. That's when Elliot entered, briefcase in hand. Steady, silent, unbothered. He nodded to the room. Good morning. I'm Elliot Miles, legal counsel for Mrs. Denise Jenkins, majority shareholder of Creswell Holdings. The silence was deafening. Wexler's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Denise placed the folder on the table, opened it calmly, and began laying out the papers. Original partnership contracts from 1998. Amendments. Signed. Notarized transfer of rights from Roland Jenkins to his wife upon death. Curtis turned pale. You kept all that, he muttered. Denise met his eyes. You helped write them. Wexler laughed. Nervous. This is some kind of stunt. Elliot stepped forward. It's not a stunt. It's binding. And under Article 7, Section 3 of the original shareholder agreement, Mrs. Jenkins reserves the right to call a vote of no confidence. Denise walked slowly around the table. I watched this company become something I no longer recognized. Watched it lose its soul, its integrity. And watched the people who built it be discarded like garbage. She stopped behind Wexler's chair. And you, she said, her voice low. You turned my husband's legacy into a playground for your ego. He stood up, defiant. You think you can just walk in here and take over? She leaned in. I didn't walk in. I built this room. And that was the moment everything broke. The room didn't know what to do. No one stood up. No one spoke. They just stared. At Denise. At the folder. At the truth that had just been laid bare. Curtis sank in his chair, hands twitching. Meredith blinked rapidly like she was still buffering. And Wexler, he tried to laugh. This is ridiculous. You think a mop and some old documents give you power here? Denise tilted her head. Eyes calm. No. But the ownership does. She turned to Elliot. Let's proceed. Elliot opened his briefcase again, pulled out a stack of envelopes. These, he said, distributing them around the table, are formal letters of action. In accordance with Mrs. Jenkins' authority as majority shareholder. One landed in front of Meredith, one in front of Curtis, and one directly in front of Wexler. He didn't open it, just stared at the envelope like it might bite him. Denise spoke again, low. Steady. Controlled. For 15 years. I watched bonuses grow while wages shrank. I watched employees fired without warning. I watched safety violations covered up and drivers overworked. I watched cafeteria hours cut, benefits slashed, and janitors treated like shadows. She stepped forward. I kept every receipt, every date, every name, every quote. You laughed. You lied. You thought no one was listening. She placed one hand on the table, looked straight at Wexler. And you turned this place into a machine built on fear and vanity. Wexler stood up, voice cracking. You have no idea how this business works. Denise didn't flinch. I do. Because I helped build it. I've read every report. I've walked every hallway. I've seen the soul of this company rotting from the top down. She pointed to the letter in front of him. Effective immediately, your contract is terminated. Security has been notified. Wexler's jaw dropped. You can't do this. Curtis. Still Paule. Muttered under his breath, she already did. Right on cue. The boardroom door opened. 2 security guards stood silently in the frame. Not angry. Not aggressive. Just waiting. Wexler looked around for anyone to object. Nobody did. He grabbed his phone, his pride, and stormed out. Meredith followed a beat later. Suddenly remembering she had a conflict on her calendar, Denise turned back to the room. To the remaining board members, young, old, skeptical, stunned. I'm not here to play boss, she said. I'm here to fix what we broke. Someone whispered. What's the first step? Denise smiled. Start by listening to the people we've ignored the longest. The email went out at 7:02 a.m. Subject line, all hands mandatory staff meeting at 10:30 a.m. Cafeteria. But this wasn't a board meeting. And it wasn't mandatory for the execs. This time, it was for the people who kept the lights on. Warehouse drivers, janitors, customer service reps, admin assistants, security guards, cafeteria workers. The room filled fast. Mostly confused faces. Some skeptical. Some worried. They sat with plastic cups of vending machine coffee, trading whispers and side eyes. She's the new boss. I thought she was janitorial staff. Is this about layoffs? At exactly 10:30, Denise walked in. No entourage. No slideshow. Just her. She stepped up to the center of the room. No microphone, just her voice. Good morning, she began. I know most of you don't know me. And those who do, probably only ever knew me as Miss Denise. A few people shifted in their chairs. She continued. For 15 years, I walked through this building cleaning what others left behind. But I wasn't just cleaning floors. I was listening, and watching, and remembering. The room was dead quiet. I've heard your stories about the broken systems, the double standards, the pain no one upstairs ever acknowledged. She paused. Let it sit. Starting today, that changes. A man in the third row raised his hand. It was Alonzo, the driver, who'd once been denied overtime for working a 16-hour shift. "Does this mean we get overtime back?" Denise smiled. "Yes. And retroactive pay for the last 2 quarters. You'll see it on Friday's check." A woman in HR, Deborah, stood up next. "And the health coverage. It's been getting worse every year. We're already reviewing new providers." Denise said, "And for the first time, every employee will have a say before we sign anything." There was no applause, just stunned silence. Then murmurs, people turning to each other, eyebrows raised, eyes wide. Not celebration, recognition. Someone in the back whispered, "She's serious." Another voice, "This ain't a stunt." Denise looked around the room. "I'm not here to lecture. I'm here to listen. And I'll start by asking you one thing. Tell me what's been broken and what you've always wished someone would fix." Dozens of hands slowly went up. And in that moment, a company divided by glass walls began. For the first time in years, to feel whole again, there was no press release, no camera crews, no glossy posters that said "New Era Begins." Just Denise in the break room, eating lunch with her team. She sat at a plastic table beside Cynthia, the same janitor who'd cried about her son's hospital stay just a week earlier. They didn't talk business. They talked about family, about football, about the best gas station biscuits in Birmingham. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't strategy. It was presence. Denise visited every floor, every shift. She showed up in the cafeteria at 7 a.m. to greet the overnight crew. She dropped in on shipping docks after hours to talk with warehouse workers. She stood behind customer service counters just to watch how clients were treated. And she didn't show up with a clipboard. She showed up with curiosity. A young woman in the marketing department, Tara, once asked her, "Why do you spend so much time down here with us?" Denise paused, then answered, "Because this is where the truth lives. And no decision made in an office means anything if it doesn't make life better down here." That answer spread. Soon, it wasn't just Denise making rounds. It was department heads, mid-level managers. People who hadn't stepped out of their offices in years were suddenly sitting in the lunchroom listening. One day, a tech support employee left a post-it on Denise's office door. It read, "You don't lead like a CEO. You lead like someone who remembers what it feels like to be ignored." She kept that note next to Cynthia's, right in her top drawer. That same week, the company relaunched Employee Appreciation Day with real food, actual music, and for the first time paid time off to attend. No dress codes, no speeches, just folding chairs, food trucks, and a playlist made by the interns. Alonzo, the driver, grilled burgers. Tasha from the front desk handled raffle prizes. Even the most skeptical employees cracked a smile. And in the corner of it all, Denise sat cross-legged on a picnic blanket, paper plate in hand, laughing with a table of night shift workers who had never once been invited to a company event. She didn't talk about change. She became it. "Why'd you wait?" Denise. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't even a challenge. Just a quiet question asked in hallways, whispered in the break room, scribbled anonymously on suggestion cards. "Why did you wait so long?" Some asked with wonder. Some asked with suspicion. A few asked with pain because they needed change years ago, and they wished she'd spoken sooner. But Denise never got defensive. She never pushed back or shut the conversation down. She just folded her hands, leaned forward, and said the same words every time, because power only matters when you know how to use it. And then she'd explain. If she had stepped in too soon, They would have called her bitter, said she was causing trouble, dismissed her as an angry widow, still clinging to a dead man's company. She knew the script. She'd seen it before. If she had taken Curtis to court the week after Roland's funeral, they'd have buried her under fine print and public opinion. If she had tried to fire Wexler after hearing one cruel comment, they'd have painted her as emotional, unqualified. But 15 years of silence, 15 years of documented rot, 15 years of being invisible and yet present for every lie, every bonus taken, every person fired for speaking up, that made her undeniable. By the time she spoke, they couldn't accuse her of anything because she hadn't spoken at all. She had simply witnessed, recorded, waited. And when the moment came, she didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She just walked in, laid the truth on the table, and watched them fall under the weight of their own decisions. So yes, she waited, because people only believe in the rot when they smell it for themselves. Same hallway, same floor, same patch of carpet. The one where Wexler once smirked and told her she missed a spot. The one where she stood with a plate of smeared birthday cake in her hand and a mop in the other. But this time no mop, no cake, no Wexler, only silence. And the soft click of her new heels echoing against the polished tile as she walked. Heads turned, not in mockery, not in dismissal, but in quiet respect. An intern passed her nervous, unsure, and mumbled, "Good morning, Mrs. Jenkins." She smiled gently. Just Denise. It was the same name they used before. But this time, it wasn't said from above. It was said with care, outside the conference rooms. She paused, looked through the glass clean, spotless, and saw people inside laughing, sharing ideas, listening. The culture was starting to shift, not because the building changed, but because someone finally listened to the cracks in its foundation. Later that afternoon, she hosted a small gathering in the courtyard. No banners, no speeches, just food trucks, folding chairs, and real people talking like real people. A driver, Alonzo, raised a soda can toward her and grinned. "To the quiet ones," he said. She lifted her can back. To the ones they never saw coming. That night, in the privacy of her office, Denise opened her drawer and pulled out a folded note. It was from Cynthia, the janitor whose son had been in the accident. It simply read, "You proved people like us belong in rooms like that." Denise stared at it for a long moment. Then she folded it again and placed it back where it belonged. Top drawer, right next to her pen. Easy to reach. On the hard days when the weight tried to creep back in, they thought she was just the janitor. But Denise wasn't cleaning up after them. She was collecting the truth. And when the time came, she didn't raise her voice, she raised the standard. Because sometimes, the people you overlook are the very ones holding the blueprint. Maybe there's a Denise in your life, someone quiet, steady, always there, but never truly seen. Maybe you've been that person yourself. So tell us in the comments, have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever seen someone rise when no one expected them to? We read every story, and we see you. If this story moved you even a little, give it a like. Share it with someone who needs the reminder. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Because the world needs more Denises. And maybe the next one is you.